Over under the rainbow. 85b towards the last 10 lines. Rabbi Chia nafal le yaniva bekitna. He had a worm that went into his flax, garment of flax, and the worm got inside and he could not get it out. So he took off the flax and put it into some water. So asal coming to Rabbi Ami, Amarle, shkol over v'shakar al babisa demaya, demurach gama v'shavikle. So Rabbi Chia, it's going to be important who the person is. Rabbi Chia is the one that got this worm inside his flax. So the advice was, listen, put your flax, let's say coat, into the water, take a bird, slaughter it, have the blood go on in the water. The worm is going to smell the blood and get out. Perfect. Yeah. Before ChatGPT, this is what they used to do. So so the question is, one second, you can't just shecht and not cover the blood. Well, what does that mean? Hey, how'd you do that? One second, you slaughtered an animal and now you have to cover the blood. So you can't just let it go in the water and that's it. So Kate said yasa. So what should you do in a case where you need the blood and the way to get your worm out is to slaughter, but you're not going to be able to do kisu adam? So what do? Oh, nochro, some kind of strangling, a different way to kill it that's not shchita. Oh, okro, or you uproot the pipes from its place, and therefore basically it's going to die. It's going to be a nevela. It's going to die without a shchita, and therefore you're not obligated in the mitzvah of kisu hadam. Okay, now he also Rav Dimi, when Rav Dimi came, he said Amar Tzei Taruf. He said like this: you should go when he came from Eretz Yisrael to Bavel, and he heard about the story. He thought what you should do is make the animal into a treifa. So now that means puncture the animal with a fatal wound and then slaughter it. Now you don't have to cover the blood. Amar Le.
He's looking for a way out.
Right. Kiasa Divin Amar Tzei Taruf. Tzei Taruf Amar Le. Kiasa Ravin Amar Tzei Nachar Amar Le. He said a different piece of advice. Instead of giving it a fatal wound and then slaughtering it, he said rather do this nachar, some kind of strangulation of the animal. I don't know exactly. Pierced animal. And Rashi says chonko, it chokes it. I guess the piercing chokes it. That's that. Right, you pierce the pipe, and the air can't get through, or something like that. That's a way of choking. Fine. So now the question is, two people come, and they both give good advice for your worm situation. So the question is the reason, it sounds like he said specifically make it into a treifa, and he said specifically pierce it and then choke it. Why did each one say that opinion and not the other opinion? Amar le lemanda amar tzei taraf my time amar tzei nachar. The one who said, Rav Dimi, the one who said go and give it a fatal wound and then slaughter it, why didn't you say pierce it? So what would be the reason? Maybe you'll suggest, because Savar, Ein Shchita La'of Minator. There is a opinion out there. This is true. In the Torah explicitly, it doesn't say slaughtering regarding any birds. So how do you understand that? So there is an opinion out there that says that slaughtering a bird is not biblical. You actually can pierce it, and that will be its shchita, and that will make the animal kosher. So maybe the reason why Rav Dimi said you have to cause a fatal wound and then shecht it, and he did not say that you should pierce it, is because maybe you'll tell me that according to him, piercing is a form of shchita, is a form of slaughtering. If piercing is a form of slaughtering, then you got to cover the blood. So he couldn't have said that option. So maybe that's your first inclination to think that that's what he holds. For that we say, V'hatanya Rabbi Omer kasher tzivisicha. Rabbi said, Rabbi taught us in a brisa. In the Torah, it says, kasher, you should slaughter like I commanded you. Right? This is one of the, main proofs of the oral Torah. It never says how he commanded us. It just is like I commanded you. Mm-hmm. So, Melamich and it's Stava Moshe ala vesht v'alakana. We learn from here that Moshe was commanded on the esophagus and trachea. Thank you. The al rov echad ba'of, and the majority of one of the pipes by a bird. The al rov shnayim b'behema, and the majority of two signs by an animal. So, and now we're assuming that Rav Dimi agrees to Rabbi. that he's not arguing on this point, which means that for sure part of the oral Torah, when it talked about slaughtering, included in that was the slaughtering of a bird, and therefore the nechira, the piercing of the bird, you can't tell me that was a form of slaughtering. No, you actually have to slaughter the bird. So once again, if that's true, why did you suggest making it into a giving it a fatal wound and then shechting it? Why don't you just do something simpler? It sounds like just pierce it and then you're good to go. So to that, the Gemara next page, the Gemara says, Lo mi bai kamar. It says lo mi bai, meaning it taught fatal wound. It was unnecessary to teach piercing. So not that we're excluding piercing, it's just it was unnecessary to teach it. It was obvious. It was more obvious. It was less novel. Lo mi bai say nachar delav shchita hiklal. For sure, if you want to kill an animal and not be obligated in, off your game, Jules. She-box. Yeah, what's going on over here?
Yeah.
So
Too early in the morning.
if you want to find a way to, find a way to not be obligated in covering the blood, well, the most obvious is piercing the animal. That resembles nothing of a shchita. That's as far from shchita, However, the novelty was aval tzei taruf, to give it a fatal wound and then slaughter it. Okay, that you're doing a slaughtering. It's just a slaughtering on an animal that's fatally wounded. But you would have thought in that case you would still be liable in covering the blood. Aval tzei taruf ema shchita she'ena ruya shmei shchita. You'd have thought that Rav Dimi holds that a shchita that cannot bring to consumption is still considered a shchita, and therefore v'libai kisui, and therefore it would require covering the blood. Kamashwan Rav Dimi told you the way you can avoid the mitzvah of covering the blood is you could even give it a fatal wound and then slaughter it, and that would also be a way to not you would not be liable in that case for covering the blood, because, like we mentioned, two opinions: slaughtering that can bring to consumption, is it or is it not a good slaughtering? Rav Dimi telling you that it's not going to be considered a good slaughtering, therefore you don't have to cover up the blood. Same format now for the other opinion. First, we think he's excluding, and then we're going to say, no, it was unnecessary to teach the other one. He taught the more novel case. So same as before. So, so to that he teaches you like Reb Chia bar Abba that you would not be obligated in covering the blood if you pierce it. Now, the Ravin who came and said you should pierce it, why didn't he say you should give it a fatal wound and then slaughter it? So the one who said you should pierce it, why didn't you say you should slaughter it? You should give it a fatal wound. Why'd you say piercing? When we're looking for ways to avoid the mitzvah of covering the blood, because the blood's going into a body of water that's mixed with this flax coat. So there's not going to be a mitzvah of kisui dam. So presumably, I guess once the blood is mixed in the water, it gets all. I don't know. There's no mitzvah, I guess, to cover it over. You can't put dirt over it; it's going to disperse over. Yeah, very good. So
really big
right, like that pile of rocks on 15th. That's it. So the chitema kasavar. So maybe the reason why he said you have to do a piercing, and he didn't say you have to cause a fatal wound and then do a slaughtering. The chitema, maybe he'll say kasavar shchita she'ena ru'uya shmei shchita. Maybe he holds like the other opinion that a slaughter that cannot bring to consumption is still considered a slaughtering. Therefore, if you were to slaughter a fatally wounded animal, you would still be liable in covering the blood. So therefore, that was not an option. He had to teach you only piercing. The problem is, Rabbi Dvarav. So Rabbi Chia's quoting Rabbi Yochanan, who says that Rebbe, who we're going like, he saw, meaning he accorded with the opinion. Ra Rebbe Dvarav Rabbi Shimon bekisvei adam. He held like Rabbi Shimon, who held that a shchita that is not fit for consumption is not a shchita by covering the blood, and therefore he taught in the Mishnah. How did he teach it? He didn't say Rabbi Shimon. He said V'shanu b'lashon chachamim. He said the rabbis taught. because he held that was the right opinion. So therefore, we're assuming that Rabin goes like Rebbe, the author of the Mishnah, and therefore he cannot. The reason why he said piercing cannot be because slaughtering a fatally wounded animal would be a good slaughtering, because Rebbe goes like Reb Shimon, who says slaughtering a fatally wounded animal would not be a good shechita, and therefore you would not be obligated in covering the blood. So if that's true, why was your suggestion piercing and not slaughtering a fatally wounded animal? So same as before. Lo mi ba'ikamer. It was unnecessary to teach slaughtering a fatally wounded animal. That's less novel in a certain sense. Lo mi ba'iteitar of the shechita she'ena ruya lo shmei shechita. That we know already. We hold like Rebbe that a shechita that can't bring to consumption is not considered a valid shechita, a halachic shechita, and therefore for sure in that case there's no obligation to cover the blood. Oh, but one second. By piercing, maybe you would have thought that by a bird, piercing is its slaughtering, because it never says in the Torah you should slaughter a bird, and therefore you would think that piercing is its slaughtering, and therefore you'd be liable in covering the blood. The novelty of Ravin is, I'm telling you that I go like Rebbe, who says, the Torah tells you should slaughter like I commanded you. What's like I commanded you? Like we said earlier, I commanded you in most of one pipe by a bird and most of two by an animal, but included in what I commanded you was the command to slaughter a bird. So therefore, he told you that if you were to do a piercing, there'd be no obligation of covering the blood, and you'd understand because a piercing is not a slaughtering. So there's a novelty in that he wanted to teach. So at the end of the day, both of them agreed to each other. Each one was just pointing out a different novelty, but at the end of the day, both Ravin and Rav Dimi both agree that piercing and slaughtering a fatally wounded animal are both ways are both cases where you're exempt from covering the blood. Therefore, when we had to slaughter and get the blood in the water, they gave these two suggestions. Not that they were arguing with each other; they were both agreed. Just each one felt there was a certain novelty in their suggestion. Okay, now the question was, we're going to prove now basically that Rabbi Chia was a very big tzaddik, and when people went back to Eretz Yisrael, when they went back to Israel, a lot of things that could cause harm didn't happen. One of them was worms going into your flax. And Rabbi Chia was there. So how could it be that Rabbi Chia is the one that got worm in his flax? It was in his merit that tons of things didn't happen in Israel for his time period. And yet he's the one that got worm in his flax. So the teacher. So I think he put it there. So yeah. So Umi Nafal Yaniva Pekitna. Really, it went to his flax. Either Ravin, the son of Abba, or Rabbi Avin, the son of Shaba. He said, Mishalu b'nei Agola, when they came up from the exile. So and it doesn't mean like the first time. It means with Rabbi Chia, when that group, I think it was when that group came up from the exile, what happened? Pasku Hazikin. So the meteors, that's what it is? Zikin's a meteor? Okay. I thought it was like more like Shadim, like demons, like Zikin, Mazikin. Oh. Okay, meteors, fine. The Hazoos is earthquake. The Haruchos is very heavy. It says here in the Hebrew, tornado. Because it codes Old French. In Old French, it's in Ashtroibel. So what's Ashtroibel? Ashtroibel in Old French, in Hebrew, is a tornado. Which in English is a tornado. So they probably copied us. Let's try with that tornado. So the Haruchos, the Haraimim is what's it? Aimim? What?
Thunder.
Okay, yeah, thunder, good. And so those are the natural things that didn't happen. The lo hichmet yanim, their wine did not spoil, did not become vinegar. The lo lakep ishtanim, and they did not have their flax infested with worms or whatever other bugs go into flax. I'm sure Donna has a long list. So and they're like, oh my gosh, why is this all happening? And everyone turns around in Chulin and stares at Rabbi Chia. It's his fault that there's no tornadoes and earthquakes, and they're very grateful. Rabbi Chia Ubanov. So that's the question. How is his coat the one that got the worm? So an interesting statement to understand why this is true. But kimahanya schusayhu alma adidhu lo. His merits helped the rest of the world. It didn't help him. Now why? So I saw one explanation was actually I have to do with the first Rashi and Chanan, so it's like sort of related. But because the Gemara says that tzaddikim don't want to get any freebies because then it'll take away from their merits. They'd rather keep their merits and not get the benefits of their merits than lose their merits. Exactly. Yeah, they have a good savings account. Exactly. So that's one explanation I saw that's why for him, since tzaddikim don't want to do that, for him it didn't help. Hashem would rather keep his merits than have to take away from them and have a miracle happen to him. So, Kid Rabbi Yehuda Marav, and where do we find this concept where the person's merits help everyone else, but not himself? That's like what's stated in the name of Rabbi Yehuda Marav. Rabbi Yehuda Marav, ha'olam kulo nizon b'shil chanina b'ni. Now, the whole world was sustained because of Chanina, my son. This is the Gemara in Tainus. Chanina ben Dosa was an incredible tzaddik. Was able to cause the rain to come down and end the drought. So he's the one that was able to pour wine. It became vinegar. Pour vinegar. It became wine. Reason being because he was on such a high level, he didn't view supernatural or natural things as different at all. He was just as excited by the fact that his finger works as the fact that his wine now turned into vinegar and he was pouring it. He understood on a very high level it all comes from one source, and therefore he wasn't any more excited about one natural phenomenon over a supernatural phenomenon. Therefore, things happened and that were supernatural. Yeah. So Chanina Beni, and then it says the whole world was sustained in the merit of Chanina, my son. But Chanina Beni, yeah, he lived off very little. He was able to live off of, and he was sustained from what? One kav of carobs from Erev Shabbos to Erev Shabbos, meaning, I think explained, not even bread. The bread, the basic staple that people have, he was just very, very little. So that's where you see such a concept. It's interesting. There was a rabbi passed away 8 years. I was there. Well, I tried to make it there, but there's too much traffic. 9 years ago, 8 years ago, Rav Leib Steinman passed away 100, close to 100. So I think for many years, maybe like 6 to 7 years, he never had enough mazonos that would obligate him in an after blessing, which is like a matchbox amount. He also was lived with very little. Yeah. So okay, fine. That's that. Continuing in slaughtering, in covering the blood. So back to our three friends, Cherish, Shotav, Katan. So a deaf, mute, a deranged, and a minor. So Sheshachtu. So they slaughter, and we're watching. They came to a demonstration for Daf Yomi, and we're watching them. Rowan Osam. So now we are obligated to Chayiv Lechasos. There's an obligation now to cover the blood. Rashi points out, we'll see on the next page, even if someone else shechs, and let's say they would leave it there or something like that, you're obligated now to go and cover the blood. It doesn't only go on the person. So we're assuming that these people, they might not know enough to, or have the ability or capabilities to do it. So you who are watching have to go cover the blood. And Rashi invokes the first Mishnah in Chulin about that if we're watching them, it'll be a good shechita, because we're going to make sure that they don't make a mistake. This is for a chaya, the one that's obligated in Kisudan, a chaya or an oak. Yeah, not a behema. Right, meaning he's saying why are they slaughtering a deer? Why would you give your 9-year-old a deer to slaughter? Good question. We don't ask those questions. They what, they?
Give him a bison.
Oh, bison.
Because
for his birthday. We'll check the bison, no problem. Yeah. The problem is I'm not watching him. You can watch him. It's not running away. So let him learn the hard way when you try to check the bison. So okay. Now, Bain on Lebain Atzman, let's say they slaughter. You walk into your son's room, let's say he's 9, and you weren't there for the act. The bison's dead on the floor, and there's blood there. So now you are exempt from covering the blood. Pater Melekasos, we'll see in the Gemara what the reason is. Now, that's all by covering the blood. It seems like simply understood. No one argues right now. Everyone agrees that you're exempt from covering the blood. But when it comes to the prohibition of the parent and the child in the same day, So now let's see. If we're watching him slaughter the daddy, so then we cannot let him slaughter the child. You cannot slaughter the other animal, meaning the other child. The child, or if you slaughter the child, you can't slaughter the parent. Now, let's say he did it between him and himself. You walk into the room and you see the parent dead, and then you see the kid dead too. So the kid had a really fun birthday party. Yeah. So now the question is, can Rabbi Meir, if he slaughters the first animal between him and himself, now he wants to slaughter the kid, and now you want to watch him slaughter the kid. Rabbi Meir allows the child to be slaughtered, even though the kid on his own slaughtered the parent. Rabbi Meir allows the child to be slaughtered. The Chachamim prohibit it. We're going to see that Rav Meir holds that the animal that the kid slaughtered on his own is a guaranteed nevela. He for sure did not do a proper shchita. When the kid's on his own and no one's watching him, he for sure did not do a good shchita. Therefore, if you're watching him now, you can let him slaughter the child, because we assume with 100% certainty that the first animal was not a valid shchita. Therefore, there's no prohibition to slaughter the other one. The Chachamim say, no, not so fast. They don't know for sure, but there's at least a chance that it was a good slaughtering. In the event that it was a good slaughtering, well, then for sure you have to err on the side of caution. The biblical prohibition, err on the side of caution, and do not allow the kid to slaughter the child. So here there's a debate. So the umodim, but the rabbis agree that if we do let him slaughter the other animal, that he's not going to get lashes. Now it's interesting. I assume the Gemara might talk about this, but exactly how can you give a 9-year-old lashes? We don't exactly view him as liable for punishment. Okay, but the point is that it's not 100% certainty that this is a prohibition. So it's really when you warn. Okay, we'll see. Unless we'll see who we're talking about, the kid or the bystander. But there's no lashes, because even the rabbis who say it's prohibited, they don't know for sure that the first animal was slaughtered properly. There's a chance it was slaughtered properly. Okay, well, that's a doubtful. Now you're in a situation of a doubtful prohibition. Rabbi Meir says 100% certainty that first animal was slaughtered improperly, and therefore there is no prohibition at all for the second animal. Now, the question is, in the setup of the Mishnah, when it came to covering the blood, nobody argues. Everyone agrees that there's no mitzvah to cover the blood. If one of these three people did the slaughtering and you were watching, and yet when it came to, and you were watching, when you were not watching, sorry, when it came, yeah, thank you. When you were watching, there's an obligation to cover the blood, thank you. And when you were not watching, then there is no obligation, which means that it's not viewed as a valid slaughtering. If it's not viewed as a valid slaughtering, then why do the rabbis, when it comes to the prohibition of the parent and the child on the same day, why do they prohibit the kid from slaughtering the second animal? If the first one was a maybe good and maybe not good, well then in the event that it was a maybe good, you should be obligated to cover the blood, because it's a biblical command. And if there's a doubt that we're obligated, err on the side of caution and go and do it. You're obligated to go and cover it up. So, Rabbanan Ma'ishna Reisha the low pligi, Ma'ishna Sefer the pligi. Why do they argue in the second case and not in the first case? So now, so if you're going to tell me that you're obligated to cover the blood in the case where the child slaughters it on his own, and you want to tell me that that you're obligated now, what are you going to think? You're going to think, Amri, Shrita Mal Yasahi. People are going to think that a 9-year-old slaughter is 100% good. If he would slaughter in the confines of his own house, of his own room, and no one's watching, and then you would come and cover the blood, everyone would think that what? It's a good shrita. And then what's going to happen? He's going to start a business. He's going to start selling steak. He's going to open up a stand next to the J and start selling steak Tuesday nights. Yeah, and run out of business. So it's all started because you decided to go cover up the blood. So this way we say, don't cover the blood, and therefore no one's going to think that it's a good slaughtering. So says Amar, 1 second. Seifanami, even in the latter case, that you are forbidding him, you're prohibiting him from slaughtering the second animal. One second, everyone's going to see you telling the kid, prohibited from slaughtering the second animal, the child or the parent. Oh, and you're going to wonder, one sec, why is it prohibited? Must be his first slaughtering was good. So then you have the same problem. The same problem in the latter exists, in the former exists in the latter, that if you are going to be stringent and consider his slaughtering good at all, then people are going to be worried, and they're going to eat. People are going to go and eat from his slaughtering. So says the Gemara, no. Save in the latter where there was a prohibition of slaughtering the parent and the child, Amri, the reason why he, when you see the parent, when you see the person telling him, don't slaughter the second animal, you can come to one of two conclusions. Either you'll say, well, maybe it's prohibited, that's why, because the first slaughtering was good, or you'll say, don't slaughter it because why are you wasting meat? We don't need this meat right now. We have enough for dinner. So therefore, you're telling the kid not to slaughter the second animal is not a guaranteed conclusion by the onlookers that his shchita is good. Maybe you'll say that you don't need to meat tonight. We have enough meat already. Amri bisra de lo kami bayile. Okay. Well, 1 second. In the beginning of the Mishnah, the reason why you're not covering if you were to cover the blood, you can also come to another conclusion. Not that there's obligation to cover the blood. Maybe you want to keep your front yard clean. You want to clean it so you don't have blood in your front yard. That's why you cover it over. So the fact that we're covering over the blood is not a guaranteed conclusion. Oh, because there's a mitzvah, because his slaughtering was good. No, you don't have blood in your front yard. Reisha nami amri lenakta chatzeru hu tzarich. Says the Gemara, okay, but what if we see the Mishnah is talking about all cases? So shachat the ashpa Michael Amemar. Yeah, let's say he slaughters into a garbage dump. Then what are you going to say? In that case, you're not keeping your front lawn clean. So bali molech Michael Amemar. When you go and ask the question of the rabbi, what's he going to tell you? So he's going to say in that case, if you allow the blood to be covered, then everyone's going to think that his shechita is good, and they're going to come and eat from his meat. So therefore, we can't allow him to do that. Well, says the Gemara, well, according to that reasoning, Seifa Nami, Bali Malach, Michael Amemar. In the latter part of the Mishnah, if you go and ask the rabbis what to do, so they're going to tell you for sure you're obligated to prevent the child from slaughtering the second animal because it might be a prohibition. And therefore, there exists now potential for the onlooker to say, oh, he's prohibited from doing so. Must be his slaughtering is good, and therefore I can buy from his new steak business. So Ella, we reject the notion that there's a difference between the former and the latter case in the Mishnah. Rather, the rabbis argue in both. In both cases, to them it's a doubt: is the slaughtering good or not? And therefore, you always have to err on the side of caution. So in the second case where they speak, you have to prevent the kid from slaughtering the second animal because of the prohibition of the parent and child in one day. And also, you're obligated to cover the blood. If you're obligated to cover the blood, why did the Mishnah not say that the rabbis obligate you to cover the blood? Says the Gemara, the reason why the Mishnah didn't mention the rabbi in the first case is because they waited till Rav Meir finished his soliloquy, meaning Rav Meir was talking and he's telling you should know in the case of covering the blood, you're exempt. And in the case of slaughtering the parent and the child, you're allowed to slaughter the second animal. And the rabbi is saying, no, you're not. You're prohibited from doing that. But their statement is going on the first case also that you'll be obligated to cover the blood. So the machlokas, Rav Meir and the rabbis applies in both cases. A child or a deranged or a deaf mute slaughtering is doubtful. According to Rav Meir, it's 100% no good. And therefore no mitzvah and therefore no prohibition. According to the rabbis, it might be good. Therefore, mitzvah to cover the blood and prohibition to slaughter the second animal. So now, the rabbis, we understand. Yeah, they're being stringent. It's a doubtful case. You're stringent both ways. Cover the blood and don't slaughter the animal. Ella Reb Meir, why are you so lenient? My timas. Amar Biako, Amar Biochanan, Mechayev HaReb Meir al Shchitasan Mishum Nevela. According to Reb Meir, so this animal that the child slaughtered, if someone were to eat that animal, Reb Meir would give you lashes. I mean, he would not give you lashes, but he would say one is liable for lashes because it's for sure a nevela. Okay, why is it a nevela? So, my timer, why does Rav Meir hold that this child or deranged or deaf mute slaughtering is 100% no good and he'll for sure make you liable for healed, you're liable for lashes. What's the reason? Since the majority of their acts are mikulkal, are not good, meaning that they're not done properly, you're safe to assume that this act was also mikulkal. It was improper. You can 100% safely assume that that's the case, and therefore it's not a good shechita at all. Now that we mentioned this reasoning for Rav Meir, now we're going to ask, why did he say it like that? It sounds like it's only because most of their acts, Barov not saying are mikulkal, the majority of their acts are in general not proper. So you can assume that this act was also not proper. But the problem is, it sounds like if the majority of their acts were good, you did a study, whatever it is, and you found that 95% of the mitzvahs were done properly by a minor, a deranged, and a deaf mute. So it sounds like in that case, you would be prohibited from slaughtering the second animal, and you'd be obligated in covering the blood. So Amar Rav Papa Rav Huna braid Rav Yeshua, Amar Rav Huna braid Rav Yeshua Rav Papa. My area rove. One sec. Why did Rav Meir's reasoning? Why was his reasoning that majority of acts? Let's say I have a child, just pick that for easier. Or let's say a deranged. The majority of acts by a deranged person are improper. What if it would be the opposite? What if the majority of the acts of a deranged was proper? It sounds like then you would have no then you would disagree, and you would say that in that case you have to be worried that maybe it was a good slaughtering. It says the Gemara, but Rav Meir, you're the one who's always worried for the minority. Rav Meir is the one, my area rove, afilu miyut nami. Even if you have a minority, let's say a deranged had majority of the acts were good, but minority were not good. So here's what you're going to do. You're going to play a little fancy footwork over here. At least in Daf Yomi, but look more into how you do this. But Rav Meir, Rav Meir, chayish lemiyuta. First of all, Rav Meir is the first novelty. He, in many places, always worried about the minority. So that's one. And two is samach miyuta lechazaka ve'isrei leruba. So what you could do is like this. There's a chazaka, there's a status quo of the animal that it's prohibited because, Rashi points out, because there's a prohibition on the animal, on a person to eat from a live limb of an animal. So I think Tosafos other places says that it's a prohibition of you have to slaughter the animal. You can't eat it till it's slaughtered. Either way, when the animal's alive, it has a prohibition on it. You can't eat from it. That's one. Number two is Rav Meir is worried always about the minority. So even if most of their acts were good, but since some of minority of acts of them wouldn't be good, you take the minority. So in this hypothetical world, it means you take the minority of acts of the deranged that are not good, and you put it together with the prohibition of eating the animal when it's alive. And together, what does that do? The Israel Leruba, it weakens the majority. So even if the majority of the acts of the kid was good, or the deranged was good, you could, even if it was good, you take the minority, which is not good, apply and put it together with the chazaka, with the status quo, which is prohibited, and together it ruins the majority, and therefore, once again, you would never say that the shechita is a good shechita. So why you, Rav Meir, gave a reasoning that only the majority of the acts are no good? Even if the majority of the acts were good, you can take the minority of the acts that are not good, put it with the status quo, which means that the animal is prohibited until the last moment that we knew this animal, it was prohibited. So until we know otherwise, you can assume it's prohibited. Put it together, weaken the majority, and still consider the animal to be 100% a nevela, and you would still say the same thing. Where do we see that Rav Meir said you could do this? That you take a minority that he's worried about and put it with a status quo and weaken a majority. You find a little kid playing around in the garbage, and he has a piece of dough in his hand. And now in the garbage, what hangs out there? A lot of shruts and a lot of these creepy crawlies that can impurify the dough. So now the kid walks out with a hand holding a dough, and you want to know, is the dough permitted? Is it impure or is it pure? So Rav Meir is mitaher. Rav Meir says 100% pure, nothing to worry about. The Chachamim say no, it's impure. Why? It's the way of a child to go rummaging around in the garbage, and very likely that it came across a creepy crawly, and now it's going to be impure. So what's the reason of Rav Meir that he says it's 100% pure? The Amrinan, my time to Rav Meir, says Rav Meir, Kasavar, first of all, Rov Tinokos Metapkin. You're right. Most little kids, are scrummaging around in the garbage. You're right. Umiyut, but a minority of them don't do that. Always those, weirdly well-behaved children. Yeah, that don't do that. So umiyut aimet. So you find the kid holding dough, walking down the street, walking the show. Oh, where do you get the dough from? Well, I say most kids his age rummage around in the garbage, but some of them, are doing olive bays or whatever. So umiyut aimet, they don't rummage around in the garbage. The isa zu, and this dough, last we knew it was pure because it came from a regular thing of dough. So take the minority of kids, put it together with the status quo. Isa zu becheskas tahara omedes. Next page. What do you do? Smoke muta lechazaka. Put the minority with the chazaka. The isa leruba, and then it'll weaken the majority. And therefore, majority of kids hang around the garbage, but you put the minority with the chazaka, with the status quo, and together you ruin the majority, you weaken it, and therefore you can assume with 100% certainty that this challah, this dough is going to be pure. So says the Gemara, okay, that's good by impurity. Im amru safek tuma l'tayir, yomru safek isar lahatir. Okay, by impurity, just because you said this idea over there, will you really permit violations, permit prohibitions? No, just because you said it by the world of impurity and purity. So does not mean that you're going to say the same thing by prohibitions. By prohibitions, we're more stringent, and therefore you can't say that. And therefore, the reasoning of Rav Meir could only be because the majority of the acts of a deranged or a deaf mute or a child are usually not good. Majority of their acts are not proper. They're not proper. So therefore, you can assume that this act of slaughtering is 100% improper as well. But if the majority of the acts were proper, you would not take the minority and put it together with the status quo, because this is a world of prohibitions and not a world of purity and impurity. Now, what the difference between those two is probably a footnote. Yeah. Sorry, we're a little behind. We'll catch up.